Let us continue by talking a little bit about architecture. And in particular, I like to identify the components that are responsible for detecting security vulnerabilities. That is, all the different findings, incidents, and so on. So this is a simplified version of the no-name platform architecture. Okay. So all components are containerized of the Docker kind, and they're deployed either in a Docker Swarm or a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, or a Kubernetes cluster. Um, Docker Swarm is being deprecated. Just a quick warning. And Kubernetes will be our go-to platform. There's a component called Nginx. Uh, Nginx is a very well-known web browser firewall. Wouldn't call it firewall, reverse proxy, and so on. Right. So it's a web server primarily. We use it as a proxy. All requests go through Nginx, and then they are redirected to the corresponding components. Okay. Now, there is a set of components that are referred to as management. These include the user interface, and they are there pretty much to manage the no-name platform in general. Okay. Some of the subcomponents of management is called platform, or at least one of the components of management is called platform, and it contains subcomponents. Platform is pretty large. Okay, it contains the antigen, it contains the ngraph. Okay, antigen is responsible for identifying posture findings. Posture findings. Okay, that's what antigen is responsible for. It makes use of ngraph. The heck is ngraph? Well, definitely relates to some kind of a graphical application, right? And that's exactly what it is. Given enough permissions, when we perform our integration in order to funnel traffic, API traffic, network traffic into the no-name platform, uh, given permissions or enough permissions, the no-name platform is able to identify the topology of your environment, of your ecosystem that is executing your APIs. So we're able to identify, okay, well, here's an EC2, or here's a VM, or here's a host that is serving my APIs. This host is fronted by an API gateway, a web application firewall, a load balancer, and so on. Right? We're able to identify your topology and build a corresponding graph, or build a graphical view of your topology that is executing your APIs, right? Your network, in essence. What that allows us is to use that information in order to identify findings, posture findings. Findings such as my API is serving requests to the internet without being fronted by an API gateway, a WAF, and so on. We're also able to identify whether the servers that they're serving your APIs make use of proper cipher suites, right? All of these are posture issues. Okay, environment level posture issues. And then there are application level posture issues, such as, I don't know, you are allowing requests to successfully being processed, even in the presence of expired JSON Web Tokens, just to give you one example. And these are application level posture findings. We're going to talk about them in more detail. But antigen makes use of ngraph in order to identify posture findings. Okay, that's what antigen does. All right, the engine. Now you may see the engine as a single component right here, but it's not just a single component. There's a few components within it, or subcomponents within it, and it's responsible, the engine pretty much is responsible for ingesting live traffic, discovering APIs, learning their behavior so that we understand what normal API behavior is, analyzing it, and so on. Okay? So this is one busy component. By the way, this is where AI is at. Okay? This is where AI is at. Right? And what do I mean by AI? Well, we have machine learning and data science models under the hood that capture that normal behavior. Okay? We'll talk more about this in a few set of slides. Okay? And of course, we have databases in order to store information for the sake of posterity. Okay? So these are the main components. Now, there's a separate service called the recon service. The heck is the recon service? Well, it's a separate component outside the Noname platform, but it communicates all information to the Noname platform. Okay. So what does the recon service do? Well, it simulates reconnaissance attacks or attacks that happen by an attacker during reconnaissance. This is just a simulation there, right? It pretends to be an attacker trying to find weak spots, weak points into your infrastructure. Okay? What do I mean by that? The Noname platform communicates information to the recon service. The only thing it does, it stores in the database. The recon server reads the information, fuzzes that information, discovers additional elements of your infrastructure, your network, and so on, scans the contents of that network for sensitive and forbidden data. And just to give you an example, what do I mean by sensitive and forbidden data? Client IDs, client secrets, tokens, and so on, right? And if it finds anything, it reports it back to the Noname platform. That's what it does. Okay, and again, this goes back, this reconnaissance simulation probes goes back to the cyber kill chain. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the cyber kill chain. If you're not, it's pretty much, it's a concept, cyber kill chain, and I like the Wikipedia page. So it's a concept created primarily by Lockheed Martin, right? I don't know, many decades ago, right? Used in a military setting. Here's the different phases, and these phases translate directly into the cyber kill chain. Okay, and if you pay attention, the very first phase is called reconnaissance. It is the phase where an attacker or a potential attacker will attempt to research, identify, and select your targets. Pretty much tries to learn about your ecosystem and find vulnerabilities. Okay, that's what an attacker is going to do. All right, so the recon service simulates an attacker performing all the tasks that you see under this reconnaissance phase. If it identifies any vulnerability, it will report it back in the Noname platform as a recon finding. Okay, that's what it's going to do. Alrighty, back to the slides. So this is your recon service. Okay, and again, we're going to talk a little bit more when we get to the corresponding to the next section, and then finally in the one of the final sections when we'll specifically talk about the recon findings. Okay, all right. And with this, we completed the second section of our class, talking about architecture and the different components that are responsible for identifying findings and incidents.